Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 6 of the News Desk. I'm Chris Stafford alongside Nancy Gillen in London. How are you feeling, Nancy? You know, we've been keeping in touch over the past few days because you sent me a message last week, was it, that you had tested positive to COVID. Somebody tapped you on the shoulder. It was your turn, huh?
Yeah, it was. And I think, well, last week when we recorded the podcast, I said to you I wasn't feeling 100%. And then I had done a COVID test that day, but it was negative. But yeah, 2 days later, I tested positive. I'm feeling fine. I'm still testing positive at the moment. So it's obviously quite a long stint of COVID. But I feel, luckily, I think, you know, the fact I'm triple vaxxed means it hasn't really... I haven't had too bad symptoms. I think just kind of general tiredness, but, you know, it's kind of just like a mild cold, really. So I feel quite lucky that I haven't had it too badly. And yeah, I've said to you, it's more that I think battling more cabin fever than anything. As someone that likes to go out and run and stuff like that, it's quite frustrating when you're kind of limited to just your house. But hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll soon be testing negative and back out there. And at that point, I've had it. So shouldn't get it, you know, for at least 6 months. Hopefully never again.
Hopefully not, but it has put paid to your running and your training, your marathon training. This has interrupted it because you can't even go out and do that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not even go out for a walk. I've been doing a few kind of just high intensity interval training sessions here. I've done 2 or 3, but so also just my body's quite tired. So I'm just kind of debating in my mind, is it just better to just stop and fully rest, fully recover, so then I'm good to go again? Because I could inevitably accidentally end up kind of longing it out a bit. So I think, yeah, just try and sleep well and try and get better and test negative, and then hopefully be out running again soon. Yeah, well, I hope so. But this actually leads very nicely into the Beijing Olympics, of course, which are dominating the news this week, the first week of competition, because they've had their COVID positive cases, not least of all the American bobsledder monobobber Ilana Myers-Taylor, who tested positive when she got to Beijing. She was quarantined, isolated in her hotel. Fortunately, the team did rally and they sent her a bicycle so she could exercise, and then they sent her some weights. I believe now she's out of isolation in the hotel, but she's having to isolate in training too. So, you know, we've heard another story of, it was one Polish athlete. She was put in an ambulance at 3 a.m. and after being released from quarantine, which was very, very upsetting for her. It seems that it's, you know, that is the worst case scenario, is to be tested positive when you arrive in China. Yeah, definitely. And it just seems to be a little bit chaotic. I think there seems to be, you know, there's set protocols, set rules, but then instances where that hasn't really been followed. There's just been various things. I think, I can't remember the woman's name, but there was an athlete kind of before the games began who got taken out of the isolation hotel before she was going back to the Olympic Village, and then got put back in another hotel, a different isolation area. And then the IOC had to kind of rescue her and get her put back in the Olympic Village. So it just seems a little bit kind of not really, you know, no one's 100% sure what's going on. And then having that with the added pressure of that you could be missing your competition, literally everything you've worked for the past 4 years, it's just such a kind of cauldron of emotion and stress. So yeah, it doesn't seem like the most kind of organised or pleasant experience at the moment.
And that you hit the nail on the head then. It's the stress level, isn't it? When your frustration of not knowing if you're going to be able to be let out of isolation, for one, if you're going to test negative enough times to be able to compete in time, right? That's pretty scary when you get this far. As you say, it may be 4 years, it may be a lot longer you're preparing for these Olympic Games, you know, or maybe it's your last Olympic Games and this is your final shot at it. Yeah, it's extremely, extremely stressful, and I think there's a lot of pieces of that are playing out at these games, and not least of all because it's in a communist country as well, and they have different protocols, and their experience is going to be very, very different at these games. And we said that in Tokyo, but without there being the crowds to factor in and the family and so on. But I think there's an extra stress level attached to these games, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think so. I think, just kind of, I suppose just being kind of so far away from home as well, and being put in quite a situation where you're so uncertain is just not really nice. I mean, we did see it at Tokyo, like you said, but I think here it just seems a little bit more kind of complex and hard to decipher what exactly the rules are. And there seems to be more kind of things going wrong here in terms of the isolation period. So, it's I hope as many athletes as possible are able to compete without being affected by it.
Well, let's hope so. A lot more athletes are, of course, arriving, and not least of all, Sofia Goggia, the Italian downhiller, who is there to defend her title. You know, she was very badly injured in different ways. She was injured in Cortina d'Ampezzo. Remember, Nancy, we talked about that, and there were so many injuries that we thought, there's no way she could make it to Beijing. But she arrived yesterday. She's training already. So hopefully she doesn't get tested positive, or any of the other athletes now, as they prepare for the rest of these alpine events. And, of course, they're underway as the snowboarding was, skating. There's been a lot of sport moguls. There's been a great deal of sport this week. And I want to start with Ester Ledecka. You remember she made history, this young Czechoslovakian girl. She made history a few years ago, Nancy. Do you remember her name?
I do remember her name, yeah, I do.
Well, she's out to write history again, winning the gold medal. She was first to claim gold and defending that title 4 years ago in PyeongChang. She topped the podium in two different sports, snowboard and alpine skiing, and she's hoping to do the same thing in Beijing. And she's had little time already to celebrate her success with when she won the snowboarding in Beijing in the women's parallel giant slalom. Now, have you been watching that? I mean, she won, by the way. She beat the Austrian Daniela Ubling and then the Slovakian woman Gloria Kutnik. Have you been watching the snowboarding?
Yeah, I've been watching. So on the BBC, there's just various kind of, just in a studio, and then just goes around to the various sports. And then later in the afternoon, there's kind of highlights goes kind of more in depth into each sport. So yeah, I've been watching basically all of it, I think, more or less. I've seen the snowboarding and the skiing so far, yeah, and it's been very interesting to watch.
You've had more time to watch.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. It's actually been quite, if there's any time to be in isolation, having a major sporting event is quite a good time to be stuck in your room, because, yeah, I have been able to watch a fair bit of it.
Yeah. Well, good luck to Esther, and we'll see what happens when she gets skis on this week. As I said, very little time to turn around, celebrating that gold medal, but moving on now to the skiing. Now, also, skiing this week, we had the Giant Slalom. Now, I know you watched some of this, and we talked about Sara Hector, the Swedish skier, who's been on cracking form in the World Cup, been on the podium several times this year. Well, it all went her way in Beijing. She won the gold in the Giant Slalom, and she beat Federica Brignoni, the Italian skier, and in third place, one of my favourite skiers, Lara Gutbarame, the Swiss skier. So that was the 1, 2, 3, and it was really, really exciting competition because there were 80 starters, and out of those, Nancy, 31 did not finish, which is extraordinary, but we should explain for those who are not familiar with the course there in Beijing. If you have been following it, you'll have heard from the commentators that it is artificial snow, and therefore it's very, very icy. So you prepare for that. You prepare your skis for a very icy surface. But then if you have to dig in, if it gets a bit rough, then you don't have that. You don't have the grip you needed. And one of the casualties of that course. Well, a couple of Americans, Michaela Schifrin, she skied out at the fifth gate. Things just did not go her way. So that put paid to the start of her. She was going to be hoping to ski in all of the events and pick up a few medals along the way, but that put paid to that. But even worse, I mean, because Michaela was fine, fortunately, and will live to race again. But the other American skier, Nina O'Brien, she was going pretty well in both runs, but in the second run, she just caught an edge in the very final gate, and she broke both her tibia and fibia. Really, really bad break, and you could hear the pain as she fell and slid down the ice through the finish. Really, really dramatic. And I know she's had it set. She's had surgery. She's had it set. So she's on her way back now to the US for further treatment. But she's been, I must say, very philosophical, posting on her Instagram account and being, very upbeat and, looking forward to supporting the rest of the team for the rest of the games. But how disappointing would that be?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly disappointed. I was, like you said, I was watching, and I wasn't watching live. I was watching the highlights, the highlight package. And I think I messaged you saying this course looked very hard. Not a skiing expert, but it just seemed like a lot of people were crashing out. And yeah, I think it must be I think, again, it's similar with COVID. It's one of those things that is quite hard to control. Like, obviously you do have control over your own performance, but, kind of the just something, just accidentally putting something wrong, or like you say, with the service of the snow, like it just being a bit slippy and you don't have the grip on your skis, just that kind of little things, and then it's your whole kind of competition over. I think the majority of skiers, do they alpine skiers, do they compete across all disciplines for most of the time?
Not necessarily. Some do one or two, but they become specialists in either speed or technical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they needed skates more than they needed skis on the road.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think for some of them, I suppose that they are at least able to compete again. But yeah, for others, I think it would be very disappointing. Very
disappointing. We're talking about ice. You will have heard about the 15-year-old Russian figure skater who landed an historic, seemingly gravity-defying quad jump this week. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
Valieva. She became the first woman to land a quadruple Salchow jump in the team event. That was pretty dramatic. You did watch it, did you?
Yeah, I did see that. Only 15 years old as well. It's very impressive.
Yeah, and she landed two quads in a long program, with her second being a quadruple toe loop and triple axel combo. And then she fell on the third attempt, but to expect her to land all three would be pretty amazing. But she's made history there, so good for her. I mean, you wonder how much more daring they can get on ice, and especially in the pairs. I think the lifts are so dramatic now. I was watching a Russian pair the other evening, and they were so fluid and fluid in their throws too, and they get just that much more technical. You think, where can you go with this? It just gets, that's the Olympics, right? It gets higher and braver, faster,
stronger.
all of that. Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of stories about Chinese citizens, or US-born Chinese citizens. I know you've probably read these stories. There was the Eileen Gu, who claimed her first medal with a trick she'd never tried before. Did you read about that? She came from behind to win the first ever gold in the women's big air free skiing event after landing what they call a double cork 1620. Nancy, are you familiar with that?
I'm not. I've seen her do it now, but I was not familiar with the skill beforehand today. But another teenager, and yeah, like you said, really interesting, because she competed for the US, I think, until 2019, and then switched. But she's now like China's like sweetheart, isn't she? I think
yes.
She's also a fashion model, so apparently if you go anywhere in China, you'll see her on like a billboard. Yeah. They absolutely love her there. So that must have been, I imagine that was absolutely massive when she won that gold medal.
Yes. And then there's another US-born Chinese athlete there too, Zhu Yi. Is it Zhu Yi? Y-I? And she made the news for all kinds of wrong reasons. She actually broke down in tears because she fell twice during the final event in the team competition, which was really sad. She was another one who she was born in California, and she gave up an American citizenship in 2018 and began the women's free skate event out there pretty well. But she landed both her first two jumps before actually falling on a triple flip attempt. But yeah, really, really heartbreaking when that happens at an Olympic Games, of all places, right?
Yeah, again, just one of those things where it's always out
games, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's been a lot of firsts, and we have to mention, and I'm going to try this, Zoe Zadowski-Zinot. She's the first athlete from New Zealand to win a gold medal at the Winter Olympics, finishing first in the slopestyle snowboard competition. Did you note that? I remember the celebrations when she won, because this was the first for New Zealand.
Yeah, I think as well. Because she's been doing really well, hasn't she, in the World Cup season, the regular season. So I think it was almost that anticipation of her doing so. It must have been quite a lot of pressure to overcome as well, having that on your shoulders. But yeah, absolutely incredible, I think, when you consider kind of where she comes from and the fact that they don't have much Winter Olympic heritage as such. A really impressive achievement.
Well, there's a first for the Australians too, thinking of the Southern Hemisphere, who don't really have that. I mean, they do more in they do, but they don't have, like, as you say, the history of gold medals. And there was the first Aussie to win gold in the women's mogul event this week. That was Jakara Anthony. So she's made history too. So you've got one, haven't you? Haven't you got a first?
Well, I've got the oldest.
You've got the oldest. Tell me
oldest. Yeah. So Claudia Pechstein, a German speed skater, she became the oldest woman to compete at a Winter Olympics, aged 49, which I think when you can compare that to the Summer Olympics, because I think the Summer Olympics age, I imagine, is a bit older, because normally in equestrian you do have relatively older athletes competing. But yeah, no, that is she broke the record previously held by Anne Abernathy, who competed at Salt Lake 2002, aged 48. So Pechstein was also competing at her 8th Olympic Games, becoming the second athlete and the only woman to do so. And it would have been her 9th Olympic Games, but she missed out on Vancouver 2010 due to a blood doping ban. And she has been pretty successful. She's won 5 Olympic gold medals during her career so far. She didn't. I think she came last in the event she was competing at this Games. And actually, her record in the 3,000 meters, which she'd held since 2002, was beaten in the competition that she was competing in. So she kind of saw her own record being taken away. But I mean, it's still very impressive to be competing in your 8th Olympic Games. And she now has that record of being the oldest female competitor as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've got another milestone here too, a landmark record. The Netherlands' Irene Wust, she made history on Monday, becoming the first person to win a gold medal at 5 different Winter Olympic Games when she won the 1500 speed skating event. She's 35. So, yeah, records are being broken in every direction, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And I was thinking if Pechstein can continue when she's 49, then Wust can probably continue to make records there. Sounds like she's got another 15 or so years in her.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the Dutch are that's their strong sport, isn't it? Speed skating.
Yeah.
Well, one of the strong sports over here, of course, is ice hockey. And the USA and Canada have this sort of friendly rivalry. Well, I don't know how friendly it is. We always call it a friendly derby, but I'm sure it's not that friendly. But it was kind of a bit of a fun game, if you like, between them this week, this Tuesday, which is Tuesday out there. So, but the US, I don't know if you watched any of the ice hockey. They actually lost 4-2 to Canada because Canada's defence apparently was extraordinary, and they were very efficient on their power plays. But they did outshoot the Canadians by 53-27. So this is potentially a gold medal pairing too. So we'll have to watch this one, because those two, are, as I say, they have this ongoing rivalry. And if you remember, the Americans won the gold medal in PyeongChang in 2018.
Yep.
So the Canadians will be looking to settle that score. Now, what else have we got, Nancy? You've got somebody landing an historic. Well, you've got we've covered the historic quadruple jump. Have you got anything more on Beijing right now for this week?
I think that's everything from me. From a British perspective, it hasn't been going too well. We've had Kirsty Muir, she's a Scottish. She was actually competing in the same event as Eileen Gu and finished 5th. And I mean, she's only 17 years old, so I think that's one for the future, one for the next Winter Olympics in 2026. So that was quite promising. But as of yet, the British Olympic medal haul is non-existent.
Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, that could change. You never know. It's another week to go, right? A lot more sport.
Yeah.
The English women's cricket team will be still licking their wounds, because we talked about the tour that was happening down under, and the Australians got the better of the English in the end and won that series, which was a combination of different formats. And overall, in the final one-day international, was it T20s that rounded off that series? They beat England by 8 wickets, and now England are going off to New Zealand for the ICC Women's World Cup, which starts on February the 10th. We're recording this on the 8th, so less than 2 days since they're in New Zealand. And obviously we'll be looking to pick up their game a little bit, because to be beaten so comprehensively in all of the formats, I think they only won one game. They got rained off a couple of games. So hopefully they will have taken a lot of messages from that, and that they can work on before that World Cup series. So that's happening down under in cricket, and we've got just one major piece of football news, haven't we, Nancy? And it all involves one young lady called Trinity Rodman.
Yeah, a quite interesting story here. So Rodman has actually become the highest. I don't quite know how to describe it. I suppose the most lucrative NWSL contract. So re-signing with Washington Spirit on a 4-year deal, which is worth $1.1 million. So that is that's spread out over the 4 years. That will be around, over $250,000 a year, which, puts her above, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan. She's now being paid more than all of those stars, which for only 19 years old, she, has been making a bit of a scene. We've talked about her a bit on this podcast so far, and I know you are an admirer of her. And she was named US Soccer's Young Player of the Year for last year. So she's obviously a very big player, and I think it just shows as well that I don't think it's necessarily her as a player, but it's also the increasing amount of money that is going into women's football now. And I imagine soon there will be other players on similar contracts as well. Just a very kind of interesting news story there.
Yes, and she's really upped the game. Literally, she's upped the stakes. If she can command that kind of deal in the NWSL, then, when you look at the legends, like you said, Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Kristen Press, I mean, there are so many, of the USWNT players, they're going to be looking over their shoulder now, right, and thinking, well, why can't they command these kind of contracts? So it'll be interesting to see. And there's also a new league on the West Coast that's kicking off pre-season for those new teams. They've got the LA team and the San Diego Wave, and so there's those two teams, and they're going to be playing Reign, the two in the Pacific Northwest, OL Reign and Portland Thorns. I think there's going to be there's 4 teams, and they're all going to play each other a couple of times. I think it's called a Challenge Cup, and that's going to start up here pretty soon this spring. So that will give these new teams a chance to sort of break in, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, excited to see both, because both of them are very interesting projects. The LA team is got a lot of famous women involved, and then San Diego got the English interest because Casey Stoney is their manager. So I'm intrigued to see how both those teams do.
Yes, we'll be watching those with interest as they roll out. They're all busy with pre-season right now, getting back at it. Not least of all, Kristen Press. She's come back from Europe, and she's getting stuck in there with her new team. But we also should mention that Trinity Rodman has been added to the USWNT's She Believe Cup roster. She's replacing Abby Dahlkemper, who's injured, because I know that the coach there was keen to ease Trinity into this, just not overwhelm her with being on the team. But she's got the call up, and there's a lot on her shoulders. So good luck to her. We've got a tennis story next, haven't we? We're talking about making history and women really pushing the limits here, breaking that glass ceiling. Well, they've done it at Wimbledon, haven't they? Yeah,
they have. And this is an interesting one. They've raised the ticket prices for the Wimbledon women's final, so it's matched with the men's. So last year, for example, a spectator would pay £200 to attend the women's final and £240 for the men's. But this year they are both going to cost £240. I feel like probably the average fan probably wish they lowered the men's instead of raising both. But no, it's good news, because I mean the kind of motivation behind doing that. The All England club officials said that they took the decision so that the women's event isn't perceived to be any less important. And then, you're always going to get the people that complain about the fact that women's tennis doesn't play as many sets at Grand Slams. But there won't actually be, even though you're paying the same amount and you'll see the same amount of sets, because they're going to format the tournament. So you'll have the best of 3 set mixed doubles final, which will follow the women's single semi-finals, and then the best of 5 set men's double final will be played after the women's single final. So that you'll always kind of have a maximum amount of sets, even with the tickets that you get. So yeah, I think it's in the Times reported this, and they point out that at the French Open, there's still quite a significant gulf in ticket value. So I think it's something like £126 for the women's final at the French Open and £220 for the men's final. And that's quite a lot of money either way to pay for a tennis tournament. But I think it does show that if you're charging so much more for the men's, you obviously have more value. You obviously do value the men's more. And then I think the treatment that it gets, because they're charging people more for it, it will probably get that more sponsors will want to pay more for it. TV companies will want to pay more rights for it and stuff. So it has a real knock-on effect, I think, when you do that. So it is definitely good news. And yeah, I think it's obviously, like I said, as a fan, probably quite sad that you're going to be paying £40 more, but I think it's worth it for to get that equity in sport.
Well, we've been crying for equity, and I have to wonder then with that, Nell, this could be the catalyst for, those that think that the women's final at least should go to 5 sets.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I know that's obviously something that's been debated for a very long time. I was actually reading an article in the Telegraph recently which said that it should be now going up to 5 sets. There's no real reason why it shouldn't. Can I say something controversial though? I would think both of them should go down to 3 sets. I think the men should come down. This is me who prefers instant gratification in sport. I'm not one for a sport that lasts for quite a while. So sometimes I find the 5 sets in men's matches a bit too much.
I'm with you there. I'm with you. I'd rather the men's come down to 3.
Yeah.
Oh, how about being controversial? Have you seen this idea for it to replace the penalty shootout with a one-on-one? Have you seen that?
I have seen that. Was it Gotham FC? I think were doing it in training.
Yes.
Yeah, I did see that clip. Yeah, but there was actually a period in the US where that was a legit thing in men's football, where you can look it on YouTube. They would just like run at each other from the halfway line. So yeah, sorry, if you want to fall down like a wormhole of that, then I'd recommend watching them on YouTube because it's very funny. But yeah, no, I disagree with that. I want a good old fashioned penalty shootout.
Okay, all right. Well, that's probably a conversation for another day. But we're talking about how things are. Women are really things are changing. Women are making their mark in sport. There's no doubt about it. There's better contracts. There's more coverage, and you've got proof of that with a recent study about record-breaking audiences. Tell us about that, Nancy.
Yeah, so this was done by Future Sport and the Women's Sport Trust. They looked into the broadcast audience for women's sport in 2021, and what they found was extremely positive. So they found that domestic women's sport attracted a record British broadcast audience of nearly 33 million. Some of the biggest drivers of this was the 100, so the cricket tournament that was launched last year, which basically kind of advertised the women's tournament alongside the men's. There was pretty much parity in the promotion of it. And then the Women's Super League as well, which has enjoyed a new broadcast deal on Sky and the BBC starting from last year. There's some little interesting stats as well. So there were 19 million new viewers to women's sport. And interestingly, so they were somehow, I don't know how they managed to do this, but they were somehow able to work out who had watched women's cricket or women's football and hadn't watched men's cricket or men's football. So they found that 25% of the viewers who watched England women's cricket or the women's 100 last year did not watch any men's cricket on TV in 2021. And in addition, 6.2 million people watched live Women's Super League matches in 2021 without watching a Premier League game on TV. And 1.5 million watched the W Series, the women's motorsport competition, without watching live Formula One. So for me, I mean, the cricket stat is massive, but the 6.2 million people that watch women's football without watching the men's is incredible. And it just shows that it can be, it doesn't necessarily have to be you're interested in men's football, so you kind of find women's football. Because, I mean, in my case, I support Arsenal, I support the men's and the women's. But in this situation, it's people that are finding women's sport as its own entity, like as a standalone thing that they are interested in, which we haven't really kind of had the stats for beforehand. So that is really, I think, really, really great to see that it can attract people off its own back, as opposed to just like, it is not necessary just from association with men's cricket or men's football or the F1. So it's, a really interesting study, and I recommend reading it fully. There's also quite a lot on social media in there. Another thing that I found really interesting is that Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United on social media had better growth than I think 7 or 8 Premier League football teams. So on social media, they were attracting more engagement and attention than men's football teams. So it's, really worth a read.
That's, really, really interesting. Those stats and that they are, that is organic growth, right? This is not, as you say, they're not hitched a ride from the men's teams or the men's side of the sport. That's really, really fascinating. And you have that full article that we'll put a link to with the show notes at wissports.com, so you can check that out there. And the BBC have published that, though, haven't they, Nancy?
Well, they just published a news story about it. So it's the Women's Sport Trust that published it. And then that's been picked up quite a lot over here by the media. It's obviously very positive news.
Yeah, that's great news. Well, we like to. Well, I think on that one we'll end this week's news on a good note like that. Very, very encouraging. And as I said, those notes will be on our website at wissports.com. Just drop down the listen tab and look for the news desk, and you'll find all the links to all the stories that we cover here on the show. And you'll also find our social media. And Nancy, yours is, I know it's Nancy_Gillen. That's your personal Twitter, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And my Instagram is NancyGillen_sport. And then I work for Give Me Sport Women, and our Twitter handle is Give Me Sport W. So you can find everything there as well.
All right. And you'll be covering the rest of the Olympic Games. Are you writing like every day a report on any particular sport, Nancy? What's your beat?
So we were just kind of watching the games as a whole, and then anything of significance we're writing about, really. So it's quite obviously that's there's a lot of sports to be keeping across, but we're managing it so far. And then also a bit of still women's football happening as well, and there's a lot going on. So it's a very busy time, which is always good.
Yeah, well, good. Well, I know that you're still going to be isolated for a bit longer. How much longer do you actually have in COVID isolation?
So the rules here now is it's after 5 days, if you're testing negative, you can leave. And I've done my 5 days. So I'm essentially now just waiting for a negative test and then I can go, which is great. The maximum I think it can be is 10 days. So if you're still testing positive, then you can leave. But I mean, I think if that happened, I'd have to make a decision on it because I don't know, if it would feel a bit weird, I think, leaving isolation if you're still testing positive. But fingers crossed it won't get to that point. I'm hoping for a negative test like tomorrow or Thursday so I can be out for the weekend.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. Absolutely, and enjoy the games and all the sport that is on offer right now on TV. And, of course, we'll be covering more of the games next week on the show. In the meanwhile, you can follow me or Wiss Sports at Wiss Sports on your social media channels. And, again, we're online at wissports.com. So we'll be back next week with a lot more, Nancy. So hopefully by then you'll be out running again.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's actually a nice thought. Next time we do the show, I should be out.
Hopefully you will. All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you back here next week for more coverage from around the world of women's sports. Until then, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.